Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we think deserve a little bit more love, whether they're underrated or underseen. We're going to talk about them one film at a time. I'm the host, Josh Hallam, and it is our Halloween special. It's the spookiest time of year, so this time around, we put it to the listeners. We put it to the listeners to suggest a Halloween-appropriate film to take a look at that deserves more love or attention. So listener Jay got in touch to suggest we take a look at Dr. Sleep from 2019. Before we get into that, whilst I've got your attention, if you could head on over to wherever you're listening to this, give us a little 5-star rating and review. It'd be really, really appreciated. It helps other people find us, listen to us and hear our thoughts on films like Doctor Sleep, and they maybe even get in touch next year and suggest a film. If you do want to suggest a film, then drop us an email at filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. Tell us your suggestion and a little bit about yourself. You can even do it with a voice note if you want, which is what Jay did, but we'll get back to that. Back to the film. As I say, listener Jay got in touch to suggest we take a look at Doctor Sleep. Now, that's from 2019, so it's not that old. So spoilers, big spoilers if you've not seen it. 6 years is quite a while, but it's still, it's not that old. If you haven't seen Doctor Sleep, it is based on a Stephen King book, which itself is a sequel to Stephen King's The Shining. The film is then an adaptation of both the book and a loose sequel to the 1980 Kubrick film. Stars Ewan McGregor as a grown-up Danny from the 1980 film and the book. He's lost himself in alcoholism in a bid to sort of dull his gift. If you remember from the first one, he's got The Shining, which is he's basically psychic. Then he's lost his way a bit. He's fallen into alcoholism and other low-level behaviour, and the memories. He's sort of trying to dull the memories of his trauma, really, from his dad and things like that. He then finds himself linked with a young girl named Abra, who she has the same gifts as him, and she finds herself pursued by a group of, get this, psychic vampires. They're led by Rebecca Ferguson's Rose the Hat, and they want to take Abra's powers for themselves. This leaves Danny with a difficult decision, whether to help Abra, but in order to do so, he's going to have to face his demons and his past, quite literally. So, why did Jay pick it? Well, he sent us a voice note. I'm going to have to play this one off my phone, so hopefully the sound quality is okay. So yes, this is what Jay had to say for himself.
Hi, my name's Jay, and I'm from Nottingham in the UK, and I think with all the hype surrounding it too, Doctor Sleep seemed to slip under the radar and nobody really talked about it, and it's unfairly underrated, and I think it's still being ignored.
Yes, so there we go. Based on that, Jay reckons that Doctor Sleep is both underrated and underseen. He's gone for the double whammy, so that's a big swing from Jay. But let's get into it and let's see if he's right. If you've not listened before, or just to remind you of the structure, we're going to talk about what I liked about the film. And then we'll move on to the dislikes, and we'll tackle the critical reception of the box office to try and figure out if it is or isn't underrated or underseen. Now, I hadn't seen this one. I had been meaning to watch it. The Shining is probably my favourite horror film alongside Psycho. So I was really glad Jay suggested it, because it's not the first time someone's mentioned it to me. A, it's deserving more love, and B, that I should watch it, so I'm glad it gave me an opportunity to sit down and watch it. Let's get into the likes then. Well, put it simply, loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I really, really liked this. What did I like? Well, the direction, the execution of the film as a whole was pretty masterful. I think whether that's a combination of references from the previous film or just as a horror film, whether that's within the world of The Shining, the execution of Stephen King's world, or just as a horror thriller film. It is so well done. As I said with Pearl last week, for me, this is the sort of horror that is horror done right, and it doesn't rely on what I think have become slight cliches of horror, what I find tiresome, really. I think someone said maybe on the Pearl episode that, when horror's bad, it's bad. But when it's good, like this and like Pearl, it's really bloody good. It is that purest of genres, as it were, alongside comedy. And what I mean by that is this is not a film This is not a film that relies on blood or jump scares. It knows you're more intelligent than that, and that's not what it's trying to be. What it does is it finds the balance between violence and implied violence, in that it will force you to watch the uncomfortable truths of the character's actions, but it doesn't overdo it. So there is a scene that's really hard to watch with the young boy played by Jacob Tremblay, who he's basically abducted by the psychic vampires. The psychic vampires are sort of like a cult led by Rebecca Ferguson's Rose the Hat. Why is she called Rose the Hat, Josh? She wears a hat. But they make you watch it, but to the point where it's not focusing on the gory details, but it still overwhelms you with what's happened. It's still really uncomfortable to watch because you know what's happening. It shows you just the right amount without ever sort of, for lack of a better word, pornographizing it. I do struggle with that sort of torture porn element of a lot of horror films. I know some people like it. It's just not for me. The whole look and the feel of the film is great. The use of colour, the use of blocking, the use of spacing, the supernatural set pieces look brilliant. And then there's music all the way through it, which is really, really great. It uses these subtle cues and stripped back strings, which itself is a reference to the 1980 films. If you think about loads of references to that opening drive, to the Overlook Hotel and things like that, there's so much attention to detail. As I say, speaking of the 1980 film, there is, this painstaking amounts of detail and the references to it, and it's brilliant. And it also, again, it doesn't overdo it. You could watch this having not seen the first one and still enjoy it, but if you have seen the first one and you like the first one, then this will shine even more. Well, some pun intended. So that ranges from obvious things. The references to the first one range from obvious things like the use of the Overlook Hotel, which is in it, the way that it's shot in terms of the hotel. But then there are also like repeat shots of things like inevitably Ewan McGregor's character has to pick up an axe, and the way he uses his axe. Now I know there's only so many ways you can swing an axe, but it's not a coincidence that the shot of him using the axe is so similar to the way Jack Nicholson uses the axe in the famous scene where he hacks through the door. There's a lot of repeat shots of that sort of stuff. There's a confrontation backing up a staircase as well. So obviously everyone knows that famous scene, whether it's from The Shining or whether it's from The Simpsons. But they do find a good balance in making this its own film, of fleshing out the narrative by using some really great new narrative devices. I do like the idea. I was sort of laughing about the psychic vampires, but that was just me being facetious. I do like the idea of those psychic vampires. It does make me laugh. If you've ever seen What We Do in the Shadows, it does you are sort of watching it thinking of Colin Robinson the whole time. But anyway, that idea of psychic energy, psychic vampires, or even things like there's this idea of a lockbox that you can sort of battle these demons with, these mental equivalents of the Ghostbusters prisons that they use for the ghosts and things like that. But then they also don't go too heavy on exposition feeding. So as I say, it doesn't matter if you've not seen the first one, because it really expands on that world and it takes it to places. I've not read the book, but it takes it to places that are way, way more supernatural or way, way more out there than the first one. Even the first one has that sort of idea of, what is actually happening here? Is it supernatural or is it psychological? Whereas this is, boom, no, it's supernatural. I just thought it was so well done. The acting as well is great. Ewan McGregor's excellent in this. He brings a real vulnerability to Danny's character, a real, he does Damaged very, very well. I thought Rebecca Ferguson was pretty magnetic in it. She's really good with stillness. She's really good at that stillness, which again might be a little nod to the first one, because there are a lot of long, lingering shots of stillness. If you think about the scenes of like long shots of Jack Nicholson's face and things like that. But the standout for me in terms of the acting was, and I'm hoping I'm saying this right, was Kylie Curran. She plays, she's a child actress, she's a teenager now, but she is excellent as Abra, and I'm sure she's got a really, really bright future ahead of her, because for me, this is one of those rare films where there's quite a few child actors in it. Not a single one is bad, and she is absolute standout. She holds her own with established actors like Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson, and she's great. Can't wait to see what she does next. In terms of dislikes, then moving on, there really isn't much. In the interest of balance, I have made a few notes. The first one is I never really like to go after people personally or anything like that, so this isn't that. But I will say this, Rebecca Ferguson is brilliant in this. She's excellent in terms of her performance, apart from one element, which is I don't know what accent she's meant to have. So at some points it's a bit Irish, at some point it's a bit sort of Southern American Bible Belt, and it never quite lands on one, and I don't think it's necessary that she does an accent. I think considering it's supernatural and they're meant to be centuries old, it's sort of okay if she just has her own accent and things like that. So I didn't think it was needed. Just use your own accent. That's absolutely fine. A couple of other things. There was a few instances where I found the lighting choices to be a little bit distracting. There was the odd use of, I think, whether they were either going for natural light or trying to recreate natural light, or a few general lighting issues, and it distracted me. And one thing I will say is I know I've harped on and on in the podcast before about films being too long. I'm not going to say that for this because I didn't. I loved it. It gave it a real epic feel. The length of it is 2.5 hours, but this is long, and I do wonder if in 2019, I wonder if that runtime is affecting the box office success because people, for the most part, I don't know about you, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but people do check the runtime. People do check the runtime. There is a reason that I've not been able to review some films that have come out recently because I have a busy life. I have a full-time job. I have a family and a partner and all that. So I can't always necessarily get to a 3-hour, 2.5-hour film straight after work on a Friday or straight after work any day of the week. So I do wonder if people are looking at that and going, oh, maybe one for streaming, and that's why it's not as much of a box office success. But I didn't mind the length. I enjoyed it. I just thought that was an interesting point to make when we're looking at it being underrated or underseen, which we'll move on to now. Then the critical reception. So again, to remind you of the structure, we do the IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes audience, Rotten Tomatoes critics, and then we average them out. Jay picked it because he thinks it's underrated and underseen, so we're going to look at both, starting with the critical reception. So IMDb, it gets 7.3 out of 10. The audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it a whopping 89%, and the Rotten Tomatoes critics give it 78%, so quite similar to the IMDb. So that averages out at 8 out of 10. I would say I really, really enjoyed this. This is probably appropriately rated, but that's, again, we've had this in the past. It's appropriately rated because it's highly rated, so it's good. That's not doing it down. I might say it could be slightly underrated. Perhaps it would be an 8.5 out of 10, but it's appropriately rated because it's highly rated. Box office wise, though, according to Box Office Mojo at the time of recording, it made just over $72 million worldwide. So I think it's, in terms of box office, I'd say that's pretty underseen. Like Jay said in his note, it was there was a bit of hype around it going toe to toe with It Chapter 2 and things like that. And I think when you think about the popularity of The Shining, the cast in The Shining, the cast in this, the fact that it's such a classic horror film and things like this, Stephen King in himself is a draw. I think you probably have expected more than 72 million quid, because I'm not sure if it's even making its money back there based on the cast and how much detail's gone into it. So for me, it's definitely underseen. It's probably appropriately rated, but that is reflective of the fact that it's well rated. So it's definitely underseen. If you like horror, if you like The Shining, if you like Stephen King, if you're just looking for a good thriller to watch, get out there and give this a watch, because I think it's well worth your time. Really, really do check it out. And that is pretty much it for our Halloween special. So we'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, you'll find us. We're always putting stuff out there. Give us a follow. Give us a follow on Letterboxd as well. If you just search for Just Films and That, we're on there. We always put everything up that we do on there. We're always trying to put stuff out there and keep engaging with you guys because we love it. And if you go in the show notes for this episode, everything's in there as well. So you can just click on the link tree and it'll take you to wherever you want to go. In relation to this podcast, can't make any promises about your normal life. So thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from me. I'll be back next week. And happy Halloween. Cheerio.